On today's show, the Hawks had lost their 5th straight game, but this time around, it was not all that bad. In fact, the Hawks competed very well. It was pretty valiant of an effort on the road with a really undermanned roster in this one. We'll get into all of what transpired and more coming up.
You are Locked On Hawks, your daily Atlanta Hawks podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network. Your team every day.
Hello, friends. Welcome to episode 1896 of the Locked On Hawks podcast. I am your host, Brad Rowland, coming to you on a Monday evening into Tuesday here in late January. And today's podcast is brought to you by the folks at FanDuel Sportsbook. Super Bowl 59 is here, and there's no better way to make every single play more exciting than with FanDuel Sportsbook. If you're a new customer, you get $5. If you win, you get $200 in bonus bets. Download the app right now or head to FanDuel.com to get started. I also want to encourage you at the top of the show, as I always do, to make us your first listen each and every day here at Locked On Hawks. Check us out and subscribe to the podcast anywhere you find your podcast. That includes Apple and Spotify. It also includes YouTube. Please like the video as you're watching it on that platform and tell your friends about the show. And we'll dive in now to what became a loss for the Hawks, 100-92 on the road in Minnesota on this Monday evening. Yes, it's their 5th loss in a row for Atlanta. First time they've been 2 games under 500 since late November. They are now 22-24 after these 5 straight losses. And as we'll get into really throughout this podcast, this is a different result than the previous 4 losses were in different ways. Like, I understand a lot of frustrations that the Hawks fans have been dealing with the last couple of days. This last week's been pretty brutal for the Hawks in a lot of different ways, but this game is not that. So they were 10.5-point underdogs at tip-off, according to our friends at FanDuel, without Jalen Johnson, without Trae Young, etc. They were comically shorthanded in this game, is what I would describe it as, which I'll come back to more later on in the podcast. They've actually been pretty good as big underdogs this year. Coming into the night, they were actually 3-2 when they were at least 9-point underdogs this season. Now 3-3, but they were competitive in this one. They had a pretty rough first half, especially on offense. They were down 17 points at halftime, and a lot of teams would have rolled over at that point in time. The Hawks did not, though. They played very well in the third quarter. They were within 6. They were within 5 in the fourth quarter. It was really gross in the fourth. It was 20-18 in favor of Minnesota in the fourth quarter, and it played that way. No one could make a shot in the fourth quarter. And the Hawks had their chances, to be honest. They just couldn't quite score enough to get over the hump in this game and win it. And that was kind of the theme of the game overall, was the Hawks' offense just not being good enough. But as far as the analysis is concerned, I want to open by saying this. The Hawks competed very well and played well, honestly. I'm a big fan of nuance and context, and you can't separate the roster the Hawks had tonight from the results. I even said during the game, look, I would not overreact in any direction to this game. The Hawks are playing a lot of guys that probably shouldn't be playing big minutes in the NBA right now. And defensively, they were legitimately good most of the night. The offensive process was better than the results, I think, in the game. Now, it wasn't great. They don't have creators. They don't have Trae. They don't have Jalen. They didn't even have Dyson Daniels in this game, any of that. But they had a real chance to win this game in the final minutes. With this roster on the road against a team that's not as good as they've been in the last couple of years, but the Wolves are still pretty decent anyway, and playing at home, and the Hawks were right there in the game. So obviously it's a 5th straight loss. The frustrations do mount. I get that. I would just try to not have this game be part of that. It's a very different result. I know it adds to the rest of it. I totally understand that. But this is a situation where the Hawks were just not drawing dead, but certainly drawing in a difficult position from tip-off. So I thought it was pretty impressive to not roll over again for this Hawks team and make it very interesting in the fourth quarter. So I want to just leave with that out loud and say, the Hawks, it gets overused, this trope, but I thought it was legitimately a valiant effort from Atlanta in this game, which I want to at least lead with. So on the positive side, as to how they actually played, defensively, they were legitimately good in this game. Some of that is probably attributable to the Wolves not playing well. And actually, after the game, their head coach, Chris Finch, went kind of crazy on them about how their effort was poor, how they didn't play well. I think he's actually right about that. I think if I was a Wolves fan, this would be a bad win in some respects. There are no bad wins, to be very clear, but the Wolves did not play well in this game. But part of that is credit to the Hawks, who played very well defensively through most of this game. They had a 98 defensive rating in the game, including a 75.5 defensive rating after halftime. So they allowed, in the second half, 40 points in 48 minutes. The Wolves shot 31% from the field, 4-2 from 3. They missed 9 free throws, and then the Hawks also forced 11 turnovers after halftime. Again, it's always a two-way street. They didn't play well, but the Hawks did. All that matters But holding your opponent, and a decent opponent, to less than 0.8 points per possession for an entire half of basketball is pretty impressive, no matter who's playing or the context. For the full game, the Wolves were sub 40% from the field. They were just okay from three. The Hawks forced 18 turnovers in the game. They rebounded the ball just fine. They only allowed 6 fast break points. They were getting back the entire game, busting it effort-wise. The only real problem was free throw attempts. They allowed 29 of those, which is not a bad, not a good thing necessarily, but also is a good sign that you're playing hard in a lot of ways. Like, you're playing physically, not always smartly, but playing physically and with effort throughout the game. So the first half was a little bit shaky at times, especially the first quarter and a half, probably. But the Hawks were really good defensively. It's like basically impossible to play about the defense in this game. When you allow less than a point per possession to a pretty good team, like, that was a very strong performance on that side of the floor for Atlanta. But of course, that leads to the offense. So it was just not good enough offensively. And not to just dismiss the entire game, but that was very foreseeable. When you look at the roster the Hawks had available in this game, they don't really have a lot of guys who I would describe as like above average current NBA offensive players. DeAndre Hunter is one. He had a big game in this game. I think Vit Krejci is kind of getting there right now. Okongwu maybe is there. Garrison Matthews maybe as a sharpshooter, but a lot of guys who either lean defense or are on two ways, and they're playing hard and they're competitive. They're pro players, but they're not like established offensive first players in the NBA. So it wasn't surprising, but this is another way to frame this that I think is pretty interesting context. Coming into tonight, the Hawks were 8-0 this season when they had a defensive rating of 104.5 or better. So essentially, their top 8 defensive games of the year, they won them all. Tonight, they're now 8-1. They actually had a top 5 defensive rating of the season for the team and lost by 8 points because offensively they just could not score enough in this one. They had an 89 offensive rating in the game. That is their fourth worst of the season here in game 46. So it was a bottom 10 percentile game for the Hawks offensively this year. They had a 67 offensive rating in the half court. So they scored, less than 0.7 points per possession every time they were not in a running situation in transition. So that's tough. That's the first percentile, which is not the percentile that you want. You want 100 percentile. This time they were first. They just could not score when the game slowed down. And again, part of that is that there was some bad, good results, bad process moments, especially in the fourth quarter of this game offensively for Atlanta, but they just didn't have the talent either to either create or make shots. They were 39% from the field in this game, 28% from three. They actually got up a lot of threes, which I think Quinn even acknowledged post game. Like, they got some good looks. They just didn't make them outside of Hunter, who shot it well in this one. They also had some turnover problems, which was very foreseeable. That's one area where the Hawks have had problems this year when Trae Young is not available or not on the court, is that the rest of the team is not great at ball security, and they had 22 turnovers in this game. By the way, Trae is a high turnover guy as well, but he takes a lot of usage. There's a math contingent of that. And without going deep into that, when guys are not able to create offense on their own, it leads to passing, which is good, but you could kind of get leads to overpassing, and Quinn's attributed that a couple times this year. So overpassing in the lane leads to turnovers, ball security issues, not a whole lot of ball handling available for the Hawks in this game, for instance, and only 24 assists as well. So about a 1-to-1 ratio there. That's not what you want. And really the only high-level passer the Hawks had available in this game is Vit Krejci. I think Keaton Wallace is a pretty decent passer for sure, more of a combo guard. Okongwu as a center is a pretty good passer, but not a whole lot of passing talent available for the Hawks. Their best player in this game, DeAndre Hunter, is not a good passer at all. Guys like Ricochet right now as a young guy, for instance, you're playing Mo Gay, you're playing Don Barlow, Capella, Garrison Matthews, not a lot of playmaking, I would say, overall, beyond Krejci, Wallace, and a little bit of Okongwu at center. They did okay on the offensive glass. And I mentioned this before, I'll come back to him later on, but DeAndre Hunter was out of his mind in this game as a scorer, a career-high 35 points for Hunter in 32 minutes. So obviously very efficient there, very productive. The rest of the team shot 34% from the field and 23% from three in the game. That's everyone that was not DeAndre Hunter. So basically, he did a lot to kind of raise the floor of the team offensively, and the Hawks competed the entire game. They won the second half decisively against a Minnesota team that kind of had to get a win here. The Hawks played well enough to win despite their roster holds and hold-ups, basically. But in the end, it was a talent issue for the Hawks. And that's not a shock. Sometimes it's just as simple as like the Jimmys and Joes, however you want to say that, like the old football thing. It's like what are the X's and O's for Jimmys and Joes? And I think it really is a player thing in some respects. So overall, I think if I was a Hawks fan, I would have been encouraged by this performance. I know they lost. It's professional basketball. It's not about moral victories. I do understand that. I promise you I do. But if you just take a little bit of time to go like the next thing beyond the surface level, roster-wise, like this is a pretty good performance for the Hawks. It's not great to lose 5 games in a row, obviously, and the damage was really done before this, going 0-3 on the homestand. As I discussed, by the way, if you missed it, I did a show on Saturday night. I did a show, actually 5 shows last week, but the Hawks not playing well last week. Going 0-3 on the homestand is not acceptable. You do not want to do that as the Hawks, and that is much more objectionable than what happened tonight. Tonight, you go on the road, play a team that, especially with the roster they had tonight, is better than you. You're playing shorthanded, all that stuff. So, like, grading on a curve, yes, but also I like to give you a little bit of nuance on this podcast every once in a while. All right, more to come on the podcast today about the sort of ins and outs of this one, my analysis about player performances, how the game flowed, rotation stuff, and more. First, though, a word from our partners on the show. Today's show is brought to you by FanDuel Sportsbook, and Super Bowl 59 is here. 1 game, 2 teams, endless possibilities. And there's no better way to make every single play more exciting than with the folks at FanDuel Sportsbook. Whether it's predicting who's going to score the first touchdown in the game, calling the winner of the MVP award, even betting on the coin toss before the game even begins, they make it all so easy for you to partake in the action at FanDuel. They have everything you need and what you're looking for, including over-unders, point spreads, money lines, player props, game props, same-game parlays, live betting, and so much more. And with live betting all game long, you can adjust your bets as the game unfolds and feel the thrill from kickoff until the final whistle is actually blown. And the live betting feature also lets you stay involved no matter what happens on the field, actually. And the app is super easy to navigate as well. Plus, if you know that you can place a $5 bet and potentially win $200 in bonus bets for the Super Bowl, that is absolutely icing on the cake. Download the app right now or head to FanDuel.com to get started and bet just $5. If you win that bet, you'll get $200 in bonus bets. Again, bet $5 if you win, $200 in bonus bets at FanDuel, and the place to go is FanDuel.com. Bet with FanDuel, official partner of Super Bowl 59. All right, before I get to the kind of how this game unfolded and my detailed kind of notes on this one, I didn't want to lead the podcast with a laundry list of injury stuff, but we have to get into a little bit of this stuff about how this roster came to be today. Trae Young was ruled out with a hamstring issue. I was not surprised about that whatsoever. He was questionable for the game on Saturday. He was quite bad in the game on Saturday. And coming out of that game, leaving the arena on Saturday night, I would have been surprised if he had played both ends of this back-to-back. Because the Hawks do play again, by the way, on Tuesday at home. That's a very tough back-to-back with travel. So not surprised he didn't play. We'll see if he plays on Tuesday. Jalen Johnson is still TBD. There's been no update. I gave you the basically non-update that the Hawks released a few days ago. I believe, and I'm not reporting this to be absolutely true, but it seems like the Hawks are trying to get a second opinion on Jalen's shoulder. We will see on that. Everyone's still holding their breath on that. He didn't play in this game, TBD. Then Dyson Daniels, who is arguably the third best player in some respects, was a late scratch with an ankle issue. So I don't know severity on that. He was not in the injury report until late in the day on Monday. So hopefully it's nothing huge for Dyson. They need him on Tuesday, for instance, but that's something to keep an eye on. He did not play in this game as well. And then Larry Nance Jr. also missed this game. He was actually questionable with injury management for the hand issue. Of course, they had surgery on a few weeks ago. He clearly did it up a little bit in the game on Saturday in his return. Quinn did say from the podium Saturday night that it was not a issue. Like, he was still clear to come back in the game, but obviously he missed this one. The real tell on Nance is going to be Tuesday's game. If he plays Tuesday, I will exhale a little bit on that one. If he misses that game, it might be kind of a recurrence, and we'll see how that goes. So anyway, he didn't play. That's 4 guys out. Then they did have 10 guys available in this game. I thought it was going to be 11, but Bogdanovich was a pretty strange scratch. So he was on the active list for the game, although so was Dyson, so that's not like out of the ordinary. But he was not on the injury report all day long, at all. Not questionable, not probable, not listed at all on the injury report. And then he showed up on the bench in street clothes. So I was told by the Hawks, basically at tip-off, that he was going to be a DNP in the game. So they decided he wasn't going to play for whatever reason. They can't say injury because he wasn't on the injury report before that. I don't know what's happening here. So, of course, as the internet is wont to do, people jumped in. Oh, he's getting traded. I'll say this. It would not shock me if Bogey was in trade talks at all. But I've been around long enough to know that when a guy sits like this, it does not automatically mean he's going to be traded. So My takeaway would not be that. Is it possible that he's traded before the deadline? Definitely possible. And he should be in trade talks. It's not out of the ordinary at all. But I'm not going there personally until I hear actually that's the case. Obviously, he struggled a lot this year. Not a secret. He's not been right physically this year as well. So being careful with him makes sense. Possibly with Dyson as well. Like you want to be a little bit careful in the game like this on a back-to-back. Also, he was on the bench with the team. Like usually if it's a scratch for a trade thing, he won't like be around the team. He sat on the bench the whole game. They do play again tomorrow. So it's not crazy at all to have rested or kept an eye on Bogey in this game. But it was also handled very strangely. So I do understand that. And the Hawks are inviting that speculation from fans when they handle this way. You know, DFS players were all frustrated about this. Anyway, all that stuff doesn't matter. But in the end, no Bogey in the game. We'll see if he plays on Tuesday. Long preamble, but there were two positive things on the player evaluation when it comes to like who was available. Zachary Richer returned in this game after missing six games in a row with the adductor strain. He didn't play fantastically, but it was nice to have him on the court, and I thought he had some nice flashes. And then DeAndre Hunter came back after missing the game on Saturday with illness. So they had more guys than you might have thought based on that huge injury report, but it was still very heavy on guys who are not always in the rotation for this Hawks team. And then right away, it was 13-2 out of the game for the Wolves. Now, you could argue this game was lost in that 5 minutes, basically. I wouldn't go quite that far, but it was certainly a bad spot to be in when you're already uphill on offense. They missed 8 of their first 9 shots in the game. They scored 2 points in about 5 full minutes, and then Keaton Wallace made a 3, but it was like, all right, they dug a hole, not what you want to see there. Rotationally, they brought Hunter off the bench, which is, I know, not popular, but they've just decided that's going to happen. Obviously, he is better than everybody else that they had it forward. But they don't want to start him. I get it. It is what it is. Then Garrison and Clint played. Mo Gay got his first rotation stint of the season for Atlanta in this one. We'll come back to how he played later on in the podcast, but he's not even been active for a game for about 2 months and only played twice this year, both in garbage time. He had an up and down game, some flashes, some low moments. Like he played like a guy who's very young and he was not efficient, but he was flying around. He is athletic. He is tall. He is talented. And there was a lot of that in this one. And then they pretty much staggered Vit Krejci and Keaton Wallace the entire game, which made sense. They started them together, but then the whole game, one of them at least was on the court to be the nominal point guard. Especially without Dyson, they only really had 2 options there. It was Vit and it was Keaton. But the Wolves couldn't make shots either, which definitely helped the Hawks out to stay in this game. That was through the case the entire way. They played pretty well at the end of the quarter and were down by 8 at the end of the first. Then they gave up an 11-0 run in the middle of the second quarter, in which, again, offensively, I think they went 6 plays in a row without scoring. That's tough. There was a little skirmish between Okongwu and Gobert mid-quarter that led to double technical fouls. Nothing huge there, just mostly words, a little bit of shoving, but just kind of it's always Rudy Gobert. He's always involved in everything, basically. But the Hawks were down 17 points at halftime, which I said earlier. It was because of the offense. They scored 43 points on 50 possessions in the first half. That's an 86 offensive rating. And there was more to come on that front, but that was why they were down at halftime for the most part. And I will say they needed to make a dent in the lead right away after halftime, and they did that. They actually came out of the gate with a 15-6 run, jumped in the third quarter, got within 8 pretty fast. Okongwu made a couple of buckets in a row, actually hit a non-corner 3, which is a rarity for him. Richer hit a 3. The one guy who didn't play in the first half was Don Barlow, who was active. He did play in the second half, actually played 9 minutes. He was just okay, but he got in that and actually played some minutes before, which is not done this year. Quigley throwing everything at the wall that was sticking or not sticking in this game. But as soon as the lead got down to 8, the Wolves pushed it back up to 16. The Hawks did a couple of times, though, kind of volley back and forth. No one could score at the end of the third quarter. There was literally a 3+ minute period where no one scored a point. It was actually kind of funny to watch. Turnovers, missed shots, missed free throws on both sides of the floor. Like, it was just totally gross basketball. Finally, Matthews made a 3 late in the quarter to kind of end the madness. The Hawks cut the margin from 17 down to 6 at the end of the third quarter. So they were firmly back in the game after making 5 threes and having 9 assists in that third quarter. Huge stuff there. But then, of course, they allowed a big run early in the fourth quarter. And that was the problem, was that they dug the hole again, and that was hard to come out of. Hunter was on the bench, which he kind of had to be. He couldn't play the entire game. They were back in it, though. Hunter had 30 points in his first 25 minutes of action. Like, he was awesome. They kept chipping away. But both offenses kind of stalled out in the middle of the quarter. I said before, but it was 20-18 in the fourth quarter. Like, no one could score in the fourth. But what I will sort of circle now is where the Hawks had their chance in this game. They had a stretch of 6 possessions, mid to late fourth quarter, in which they scored 1 point. Now, that wasn't out of the ordinary in this game, but it was right there for them. It was like an 8-point game. They just could not get a bucket to fall. Conley made a free throw, and then they went 5 straight without scoring. Hunter missed a wide open 3. He was awesome in this game. That was a big shot. Then Wallace missed one. Then Moguet missed one. Then Greci missed one. And then Hunter had to kind of heave one up at the end of the shot clock. So they were getting a lot of stops at that point in time. They were playing great defense. The Wolves scored, I think, 1 point in like 4 full minutes at the end of this game, but they just could not get the 1 or 2 shots to fall to really make it interesting. They were still within like 5, they were within 4 at one point. There was actually a dunk attempt that Hunter had over Gobert that did not go in that would have made it a 4-point game in the final minute. They did actually lost. Sorry, the Wolves won a challenge, but Gobert missed some free throws at the end of the game. The Hawks actually had the ball down 6 with about 21 seconds left. So obviously, you're probably going to lose that game more often than not. But you have a chance there. You got to make a 3. They come down, turn the ball over, game's over. So they allowed 40 points in the second half. Like they were right there. It really was that stretch in the second half, that stretch in the fourth quarter, where they were getting decent looks and just not making them. And I would love to know in a simulation world if that Hunter 3 goes in or if that Wallace 3 goes in, if this game gets a little bit tight. Because the Wolves were not playing. The way that I said it on Twitter, and I'll say it now, it felt like the Wolves were begging to lose this game, to be honest with you. They were not playing well. The Hawks were locking them up defensively. It's just that they couldn't get the 1 shot to fall. So I'll stop repeating that, but it really was the case that was stuck with me throughout this one. And that 6 possession stretch really was their one chance to push it over the top. All right. That's all I have on that front. We will get into the player-by-player evaluations. There's plenty to get to on that front in just one moment. All right, we'll dive in now to who played in this game and how they played. 10 guys appeared. Everyone that was in uniform ended up playing. Bogey was in not uniform. Dyson out, of course. Trae, Jalen, etc. Dom Barlow, 9 minutes, did not score a point, but was two rebounds and an assist. Quinn talked him up as if he played reasonably well. I thought Dom was okay. He wasn't great. Good energy. A little bit weird that he didn't play until the second half. Not the normal rotation stuff there, but I thought he was okay. When he came in the game, he didn't embarrass them at all. Played some minutes at the 4, and that was acceptable there. And also, as we'll come back to later on, David Roddy struggled, and they went away from him in the fourth quarter, kind of in favor of Barlow, which I was okay with. Elsewhere, Moguet. I said before, his first rotation minutes of the season, he has been a topic of conversation for a long time from Hawks fans asking me about him. Why isn't he playing? Why is he? And the reason, and look, we're all guessing because the Hawks don't really give straight answers. But I think the general rationale that I can gather is that Moguet is still very raw. And I'm not arguing that he's not better than David Roddy because I think he is. But I think they wanted to give him a long runway in the G League, have him play consistently for a long time, hopefully stay healthy, get a lot of minutes, get a lot of reps, and the Hawks have done that. Now, whether that's over or not right now, we just don't know. But he came in today, and the highs are high, the lows are low. He certainly the sheer force he can play with at that size, at 6'11", with good athleticism, is very intoxicating. If you see Moguet in the right sequence, he's like, whoa, this guy's awesome. But then you look up, and he has 4 points on 9 shots. He took 6 threes. Actually, Quinn said he was okay with that. He was pretty aggressive, but Mo's always aggressive. Something about Moguet, he is not afraid to shoot the basketball. He is aggressive, which I think they generally like about him. Did have 2 steals, but the way that I would describe Moguet in this game was that he doesn't really know what he's doing yet. Lots of little mistakes, but also he does have the physical tools to make up for that. So it's a lot of it's chaos basically when Moguet is playing, which isn't so bad when you're playing a team like this when you're undermanned. But I'll be interested to see how the Hawks handle this moving forward because. Look, the Hawks, if you look at their roster transactions this year, call-ups, roster moves in games, they've treated Moguet like he is number 18 of 18 on the roster this year. They've been more willing to play Plowden. Barlow's been with the team more often, Wallace, Roddy, etc. And look, Mo's not on a 2-way. Mo's on a regular contract. So we'll see on that. But I thought he was just he wasn't good, but he also did a lot of stuff. And that's not the worst thing in the world when you have that kind of skill set. Elsewhere, Garrison Matthews played 26 minutes off the bench, 6 points, two threes. Gary's been a little bit shaky the last week plus. He did make some shots this one, but I think he's actually his level of play has dipped a little bit in the last couple of weeks. He was okay here, but wasn't anything great. Clint Capella actually was, I thought, pretty good in this game. 10 points, 15 rebounds to lead the entire game by a lot. 3 assists, a steal, and a block for Clint. 5-7 from the floor in the game. He actually was +6, and again, they lost by 8. Not like because of him. He had one bad stretch. I think it was early fourth quarter. It was about 2.5 minutes where he was really bad. But other than that, I think the rest of his 21 minutes was actually pretty darn effective. He was efficient around the rim, the rebounding. This is more of a Capella matchup than a Kongwu matchup, I think. There are certain games and certain opponents that are like that. Like, for instance, Kongwu has been good against these smaller teams with less physical center play. The Wolves, of course, have Rudy Gobert, etc. I didn't love that in the first half in particular, they were kind of matching up Capella with Naz Reid and Kongwu with Gobert. It should have been flipped. But I thought Clint was pretty good in this game, other than that one little hiccup early fourth quarter. And DeAndre Hunter off the bench here, but he was the best player on the Hawks by a lot tonight. 35 points. Yes, 35 points on 25 shooting possessions. So he's efficient and productive there. 1 assist is funny for Hunter. That's kind of on brand for him. But shot it well from 3, shot it well from 2. The mid-rangers were there. The threes were there. He carried the offense. He really did. I don't know if he played like great beyond that, but obviously that was his big job. He was their best offensive player available in this game, and he kind of had to carry the team like that. He did it, gave them a chance to win, and played very well. Again, a career high for Hunter, by the way, at 35 points. And one more note on his performance here. Only the second guy in the NBA this year to score 35 points or more off the bench. Number 2 guy in the league to do that, and we're more than halfway through the season. So that's not a small accomplishment to have 35 points off the bench in a game. To the starters, David Roddy. So here we are. 2 points, 5 rebounds for Roddy, had a block. They were only -3 in his minutes. So like, I think there was a narrative about that. They got destroyed with him on the floor. That really wasn't the case in the game, but he's their worst player. I think we know that already, but occasionally I try to give a little bit more nuance to this, but like, he's their worst player. I think it's pretty obvious at this point in time. He does have a skill set on offense. They don't really use it. And defensively, he's just a mess, to be honest with you. I would not have started him in this game. I get why they did it, because they wanted to keep her in the role. And while Roddy is obviously undersized at the 4, he's played a lot of 4 this year for the Hawks. He's been a 4 primarily, whereas nobody else on the roster had been tonight other than Hunter. So I don't love that. They did kind of pull the plug on him in the second half, which I think was the right decision. I wouldn't start him. Honestly, I probably wouldn't play David Roddy anymore unless I absolutely had to. Like, I would rather see Moget. I'd rather see Don Barlow. I'd rather see Daquan Plowden. It's not like a mean-spirited thing. I think Roddy, by the way, everyone likes David Roddy. He's a good guy by all accounts. He's just not very good, and that's where they are right now. But he was not great in this game. Elsewhere, Ricochet came back after the adductor issue in this one. He didn't shoot it well. He was only 2 of 7 on 2s, 2 of 6 on 3s, but at 11 points, 7 ribouns, 3 assists, 2 steals. Looked fine to me, which is good. I'm pretty sure he was on a minutes limit after missing a bunch of time here. They closed with either they had Barlow or Gay on the floor beyond him in the fourth quarter. I think because they were worried about Ricochet's minutes, but he was just okay. I think defensively he definitely helps them. That's actually something I pointed out over the weekend, was that offensively right now, obviously they don't really miss him too much, but defensively in games without Jalen, like they just need his defense. He's long and he's active and at least rangy enough to be a deterrent. Kongwu, 27 minutes for Onyeka, 7 points and rebounds, a steal and a assist. Did have 4 turnovers. Like, it was not a very good Kongwu game. I didn't think. I thought that he should have had more assists than he actually had. There were some missed shots off of him as a hub. I don't think he was probably as bad as the numbers indicate, but also he did not have a good game in this game. I think both can be true at the same time. Just say it again on the podcast because I keep getting questions about this. I do not believe the Hawks are losing because they changed the starting lineup. I think it's kind of silly to even suggest that, honestly. I know they're 0-5 since then. I get it. That isn't the reason. Nor would it have been the reason the other direction. So, like, I've done it many times. I don't think starting lineups matter that much. But no matter what, I think Okongwu until tonight has been pretty good anyway. But he wasn't great in this game. We'll leave it there for now. To the backcourt, beat Krejci, 34 minutes, 4 points, 6 assists, 5 rebounds, and a steal. Did turn over 4 times. Not the best Veit game. Veit had been playing awesome for the last 2 weeks. Tonight wasn't like he was bad. Just didn't have a ton of juice as a scorer. Missed all 4 of his threes. And was -11 in the game. And then Keaton Wallace, 13 points, 7 assists, 2 steals, 3 turnovers. He was 1 of 3 on 2s, 3 back from 3. Wallace was fine. He wasn't particularly good. And I think it's probably a good reminder that like Keaton Wallace, while I like Keaton Wallace, is a 25-year-old combo guard on a two-way contract. That's what Keaton Wallace is. He's not some guy that's going to transform your team. He's had some good games this year, for sure. He has played well for the Hawks. He's done his job and more for Atlanta this year. Don't get me wrong. There's like this happened with Plowden too. There's like a theory of what this guy is like supposed to be in someone's mind where he actually kind of isn't that. But I thought Wallace was fine in this game. He was not the problem at all for Atlanta. Did his job, played a lot of minutes, played good defense, and was solid in his role. So from here, the Hawks, of course, will be looking to stop their losing streak on Tuesday. A very, very difficult back-to-back. So when this game got announced, I actually said that at the time, and I'll say it again now. It's a very, very, very tough travel situation for Atlanta. So they play tonight in Minnesota. Then they have to go home tomorrow, long flight, and play the Rockets at home at 7:30. Part of that is that the Rockets are really good. This is the snow makeup game, of course, but the Rockets won in Boston tonight. So that's one good thing is that the Rockets won a game. They had to play hard to the very end, and they were on the road tonight. So rest-wise, not that bad of a spot for Atlanta. Unfortunately, the Rockets are 31-14. They're very good. And at the moment, pre-injury reports on both sides, our friends at FanDuel have the Hawks as 6.5-point underdogs, even at home on Tuesday. I think if Trae doesn't play, that number will be even higher. So we'll see how that goes between now and then. I assume Jalen will not play based on what we said. I mean, they haven't ruled him out, but I assume that he won't play. We'll see on Trae. We'll see on Dyson. We will see on Bogey. We'll see on Nance. Like there's lots of flexibility there and not in the greatest way for the Hawks. But obviously I'll have a podcast after the game. If you want real-time updates, I will have my stuff on social media as I always do at BT Rowland on Twitter, also on Blue Sky. And if you want to follow the show account as well at Locked On Hawks on Twitter. Also follow my non-podcast work at patreon.com/BT Rowland. I'll probably write something tomorrow in advance of the game once we know the injury report situation on Tuesday afternoon. That's all I have, everybody. Please subscribe to the podcast. Tell your friends about the show as well. Check us out on Apple. Check us out on Spotify, YouTube, etc. Hopefully some more upbeat shows in the future. I try to give you the whole picture after every game. That's not always the most fun thing to do. But tonight, again, I said it earlier, I'll say it again now. This is a pretty good effort from the Hawks. It really was. And I'm not trying to spin that. Like I have no incentive to do that. When the Hawks don't play well, I will tell you that, as they didn't play well against Toronto, as they didn't play great against Detroit. But they were actually okay in this game. They were competitive. And we'll leave it there for now. All right, everybody. Enjoy the rest of your Monday evening into Tuesday. We'll see you in about 24 hours on Locked On Hawks Podcast.